The food series. Um, Flavors. When man, decided to settle down from being a hunter-gatherer to be a farmer, there's one thing you could find in a farmer's farm. It was a beehive. Why? Well, sweetness of bees, honey. Oh yes, very sought after. And it was sought after that because most, or I will say all of his other foods were blah, 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 blah. In all Romans times, Greeks, Romans, any kind of a civilization, you could find beehives. And usually, those who can afford it had them. And if you were a little guy, you want to make extra money, you have a beehive, okay, and you sell the honey at the market for premium price. Why? Because honey was used to kill the taste of your rotten meat. Just like salt was used to kill the taste of your rotten meat. If you killed something, you better brine it, which is like 10%, or vinegar it, yes, acetic acid, because it would rot. Brine is 10%, 10 parts salt, 90 parts water. So you basically soak it in there, like you do your turkey. And Thanksgiving, you soak it in brine to play with the structure of the meat. But yes, sweetness, salt, sweetness, and flavors. Because outside of the flavor of the fruit, vegetable, or the rotting of the meat, fish, honey covered that. Salt covered it, honey covered it. And flavors were sought after. Crushing of rose petals, or things like that. Perfumes, well, that also kill the smell of rotting meat, and you could smell it in a Roman market. Yes. That's why when the Romans found pepper from India, they got the crushed part, not the seeds. They paid in gold. Think about it. They buy the ounce. Yes, that could flavor meat, really, besides honey. That could cover up the taste of meat. Somebody with a salt shaker or had a pound of salt. That's why salt was so was sought after. What was that little two cities that blew up? That they had a salt mine. It wasn't potassium chloride. It was sodium. That wasn't sodium chloride. It was potassium nitrate. Basically, it's to cover up the rotting of meat. Now, more modern times, today, we have 1,000. You know what a plant-based hamburger tastes like? Without the flavor of a hamburger. You can buy flavors that basically imitate everything out there. There's natural flavors, and then there's chemically produced manufacturing chemicals. A little plug for this is something called Institute of Food Technologists, and they have, you can go IFT online, and they have shows around the country. Local sections have these shows, and they invite people who deal in flavors and food products, to that. They do it every so often. They do have a great big show where they have a bunch of people there, and there are food societies out there that will have shows, and in those shows they will have people who sell flavors. Yes, and I will tell you, flavors are very important when it comes to food. Apples are nice. We know the flavor of apple. We can tell that. Banana and orange all has flavors, but you can extract those flavors from the product and sell them in little bottles. Something I said about textures. Mike Miles of Kraft Foods, when he was president of Kraft Foods, they developed a cheese for him. The cheese was a selected cheese texture, right, given the root of the mouth and the tongue and everything else, and they put in a special flavor made for him, and he paid for it. Where you would go out and pay X number for a pound of cheese, whatever you think you're paying, his as they said, R&D said, it's a special cheese and he pays for it. Let's say you go and you get a cheese for $1 a pound, and he's paying $100 a pound, something like that, and it's its own special block, its own special cheese made for him, and they make up, whatever pounds of wheels and that, and when he has his meetings at his meetings, not the standard meetings you will have in the company, but at his meetings, his cheese is being served. Bob McVickers was the vice president of R&D in Glenview, and he did the same thing. His meetings, if you go to his meeting, you're eating his cheese, and he is the only one that has the cheese, and the formulas are, tucked away under someone's underneath someone's pillow. Basically that's it. But flavors are very important when it comes to foods, and as I said, you can buy flavors for anything else. If you want that rotten piece of fish that you have to smell like trout, there's a flavor for that. Yes. Flavors. What's the difference between my home cooked popcorn and the movie theater's popcorn? It's the flavor in the butter. That's right. And that's why when you go to the movie theater, people get the big buckets, and they pay for the big buckets because it's a delicious flavor. Your cooks in a very high class things can buy the little bottles of flavor and add it to the soups and the sauces and the breads. You have that flavor in there. I had a can of chicken noodle soup the other day. I can tell you there was no flavor in that soup. Whereas you go to something like Campbell's, which is very, very, they add flavors. You really want to taste something. You're right. You go to big companies. Kraft that does that too on their foods, to bring out the flavor. All things like cheeses have flavors in that, but to bring out the flavor, they take the flavor. You can basically pull flavor off of something and increase the flavor of the same product by adding it to the same product. As I said, Mike Miles and Bob and Victor had their own cheeses with their own flavor, their own texture, and you can't buy them anywhere else. I think Carp's Food, as when I was at Carp's, they had their own chocolate chip cookie, had was their texture and their flavor, and it was basically. All I know is I mixed things together, and I made up a great big batch of this, and then it went down to the bakery, and they would bake up the cookies, and then restaurants who wanted those cookies, that was their dessert. I think, as somebody says, cookies with ice cream on top of it. That was their expensive dessert. And again, a lot of your cookies out there that you buy have flavor added. The chocolate chip, you can get chocolate chip flavor. Which is what? Yes, you can go get the flavor of the chocolate chips. You can add it to your product to give it that zing. And I worked for a candy company. They added flavor to their product to give it that zing. They say, well, that's a big thing. Oh, no. Let me see if get that thing. You can tell the difference between something that's salty, different types of salt. Well, there's a lot of different types of salt, depending on what you want to have. And you can buy different types of salt. Go to a specialty store and see what kind of salt they have. As somebody once said, I once got my hands on blocks of salt from the Himalayas. Okay, they're big things. And it's for people who are cooking, and they take their steak in that, and they just get that flavor. It's supposed to be pretty good. I don't grill, so that's it. Again, your flavors on sweetness, honey, okay, maple syrup flavor, sugar cane flavor, I guess corn syrup flavor. That's for certain. And for bitterness, citric acid, grapefruit, lemon. You can tell when something like lemon doesn't mean there's lemon in the product. It means there's a flavor of lemon in the product. Banana flavor, peach flavor, apple flavor. Flavors, of course, when you get to grapes, there's a grape flavor called wine, red wine, white wine. Yeah. That's how we eat our foods. I have a couple of cats. I can give them tuna fish, and they eat salmon. But if you get me a piece of cooked something or other like that, say from the store, they won't touch it. And I find something else that's interesting when I toss it out to the animals. Squirrels won't touch it. Raccoons won't touch it, which is amazing. Raccoons eat just about everything, right? They won't touch it. I think a possum won't touch it, but humans will. Does it say something about who is higher intelligence? Humans? Humans are known to eat everything and everybody. So, do I have flavors at home? I think I have vanilla. That's a flavor. Nutmeg is a flavor. Cinnamon is a flavor. I guess it is. I don't use cinnamon on. What is cinnamon used on? Oh, whatever. Cinnamon rice, yeah. Yes, to give a carousel a flavor, you add flavor to it. Um, to give usually to cover up the rotting of meat. Why? It's aged meat. You know what aged meat is? Yeah, it's rotting. I think I just want the real stuff. I don't want aged stuff. I don't want anything that's aging. But that's what aged stuff is. It's basically rotting. Um, Flavor in ice cream to make it taste make it taste like strawberry. They add strawberry flavoring. To make it taste like chocolate, they add chocolate flavoring. To make it taste like vanilla and whatever you want, you add a flavor to it. Even though it may not even have anything to do with the product, it just has a flavor to it. I go back to Seal Test ice cream. Those all had imitation flavors, but Seal Test doesn't exist anymore. A lot of ice creams are not what they taste that way, but doesn't mean they are that way. They are in real life. So a lot of your stuff, your candies are sweetnesses. You expect to have mint and green candy, and but it doesn't have mint in it. It just tastes that way. It's a flavor added to it. Hey, rich chocolate. There's different flavors in chocolate, different prices that you buy. Because of what you're going to do with it in candies, it tastes like this or it tastes like that, and yes, but it doesn't really taste like that because if it wasn't for the flavor covering up something else, covering up, say, the bitterness, coffee and tea and cocoa are bitter. So why do we add sugar to it? Cocoa by itself is a bitter thing. It's adding the sugar thing. There's your chocolate right there. As you get those chocolate drinks in that, there's sugar in there to cover up the bitterness of the chocolate. Yeah, but that is the flavors. And as I said, go to an IFT, look it up in your local listings. Say in Chicago, there are big things, and go to one of their things, which is, as far as I know, is still free. Even though you might even see me there. Yes, I was a member for a long time of it, and I do help out. And you can find flavors to cover up. As I said, restaurants may decide to cover up the rotten meat smell by adding a flavor to it. Okay? That's why I had Frank Jabalski with Blowing ACS. Frank Jabalski would go walk into a kitchen. If we're having a meeting there, he would go over and pre-select the stuff. And he was pretty well known in the city of Chicago at restaurants. And if they knew if ACS was having a meeting there, they made sure everything was spick and span. As Frank said, I want to have this type of food. They had a plate ready for him. Oh, yes. The only time he ever seen was a restaurant where the guys was sitting next to me had food, and he had an extra little thing on his back with his legs sticking up. And I mentioned that, boy, you get that extra protein. We never went back to that restaurant. So, but flavors are flavors. Oh, by the way, you want a good flavor? Your toothpaste. As I said about texture is in your toothpaste. But there's a flavor in your toothpaste to make you feel good about yourself. You got a mint flavor, you got a regular flavor, you got this type of flavor, you got that type of flavor. I'm quite sure if somebody wants to add chocolate to the taste of the toothpaste, they give you chocolate to the taste of the toothpaste. Because I don't really use kids' toothpaste. I should. But, yeah.